I am your host, Saneem Ibn Muhammad Rafi, and here is my YouTube channel, Dark Justice. I really want to bring to you the latest on the plight of the grieving mothers. Humans are actually a species. When you look at them closely, you will find most of them are decent inside. For some reason or the other, they are brainwashed and they are led to believe that whoever is smart or leads them is leading them for the good. So Zionism is just one such example, but there are numerous examples in the world in various parts of the region. You can perhaps say same thing about China president, and you can in many ways say about what's been going on in Rohingya and the guys in the army who are shooting innocent Muslims and they have thrown them out of that country. You can understand there is no reason, there is enough space for them to live with there. But they rape them, they kill them, and they think they feel joy in it. And most people living in that, because the Janta has made them believe that this is the right way to do, is to clean this place from Muslims or ethnic cleansing. And this is exactly what you are finding there here in the last century or so, the ethnic cleansing which has been continuing in Palestine. It's completely a peaceful, beautiful state with beautiful, skylines, beautiful ocean, beautiful olives. I think in the whole world it's known, and the first Qibla of the Muslim 1.9 billion Muslims living all across the world, and they have the most sacred is the place of the prophets. Prophet Abraham, the greatest Muslim, who believed in the oneness of God, and at that time there was no Judaism or Christianity. The Prophet Moses came way after that from Prophet Ishaq, then from the descendants, and then Harun, and then David, and then Solomon, and after that was the Prophet Christ, and then many years later was Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was put the last seal on the arrival of the messengers on this planet. Now this is God's will. If they are not changed their divine books like Torah or Sabur or Injil, perhaps there would not have been need for another, but the Creator knows best, and there was a Holy Quran, and which mentions about all the prophets and all the books and how they changed it, how they are the cursed people. They are not the chosen people, they are the cursed people. No other nation you will find that graves are dug. No Asian nation you will feel that they are not welcome in there. No other person you will see they are so ambitious, and no other person you will see promoting adultery, homosexuality, pornography, and living on interest, and being a vampire, sucking the blood of lending money and then making those people just your slaves, or making videos of the children being crying, yelling, and raped by the Mossad, the intelligence agencies of the Zionist, Israel, who is expert in that. And now that, I think, epidemic has spread in Pakistan. It has spread in all over the world. People, in order to blackmail, are using, because such things set up precedents, and it's the greatest joy for the Satan or the devil. And that's what you find, that these leaders, and I'm not talking of the Israeli mothers, and I'm not talking of the normal Israelis, people living there, or I'm not talking of Jews. Obviously, there is no such thing as State of Israel. This is a stolen land. They have colonized Palestine and they have named it. Obviously, this can be renamed. And in this little short I am just going to show you now how killing those IDF soldiers and what has been happening to them in Gaza for the last 13 months, and now recently see how they are being mercilessly killed in 180 kilometer area, whichever few miles they go into Lebanon. The Hezbollah is just making a breakfast out of them, mincing them like a minced meat. And I think the generals, again, those very ambitious people, they couldn't give a damn to whose children they are, whether they are reserves and they left their education or they left their job to just come and defend. Defend what? And I think it's a completely, there is no purposeless war, and some ego of one man who is mentally deranged, is schizophrenic, and that's Bibi Natenyahu. He is not even an Arab. He is not even a Jew who is there. He is from Poland, and his name is not even, he adopted this name so that he should look that he is from this part of the world. He is not. He is a fugitive. And the other two, the midgets, the one with a big part ass and great big part tum, the Minister of Interior, who has been shot and heckled, and many times people try to kill him. He is most disliked person in the Knesset. And then the finance minister, this is another beast. And they are only these 3 or 4, the hawks, which should the Palestinian women, especially the mothers who are burying their loved ones, their sons and daughters, should take care of them. I'm not suggesting they should go out there and kill them, but isolate them, spit on their face, lock them into their own homes until they die. That is I think the easiest punishment you can give. And unless you do that and declare ceasefire yourself, once you have put them in there and you have taken them as prisoners, make them a citizen's arrest and put them, because no court is going to give them an order. And he's not listening to the defense minister, he's not listening to the chief of army, who's written a letter, and the recent letter which has been leaked out tells you rightly that they just want that we lost the war, and we should get out of Gaza, we should also stop the war in Lebanon, and then there will be no attack from Iran and we can live in peace.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। हकीकत टीवी साइंस एंड हेल्थ में खुश आमदीद। आज इजराइल में जो हमला हुआ है उसने इजराइल में अजीबोगरीब तर्ज के हमलों की बुनियाद रख दी है और बुनियादें उनकी हिला दी हैं, क्योंकि ऐसा हमला कभी हुआ नहीं है। ये आपकी स्क्रीन पर जो तबाही के मनाजिर चल रहे हैं ये इतने खतरनाक हैं कि इजराइल को इस वक्त तमाम के तमाम फौजियों के बारे में खदशात लाहक है कि अब हमला ना तो हिजबुल्लाह करेगी ना ईरान या बाहर से, वो अलग हमले हैं, लेकिन अंदर से जो हम पर हमले हो रहे हैं वो हम रोक नहीं सकते। ये इतना तबाहकुन हमला था कि आप सोचें, एक इस्राएली ने, ये बात समझिए जरा, इसको जरा आप गौर से देखिए, ये कोई आम शख्स नहीं है, ये इजराइल की फौज का मेजर था, यानी कोई आम शख्स नहीं था। इस बंदे ने अपनी जिंदगी का खात्मा कर लिया। और खात्मा उसने क्यों किया? ये आपको जो तस्वीर नजर आ रही है उसकी माँ के साथ है। ये असल में तकरीबन 36-38 साल का ये बंदा था। ये था पोस्ट ट्रॉमेटिक स्ट्रेस डिसऑर्डर का शिकार। अब ये 2006 से इजराइल की फौज में है, रिजर्व जो फौज है, ये जो लड़ाई करी। इन्होंने कहा जी हमने, और सोचे इसने लिबनान जंग में भी पार्टिसिपेट किया, और वो 2006 की बात है। इस बंदे ने कहा कि मैंने, यानी पूरी तरह इन लोगों ने मारा जाकर गजा के अंदर आम लोगों को। उसके बाद इसकी जो दिमागी हालत थी वो ख़राब हो गई और उसने पूरी कोशिश की कि मुझे मासूमों को मारा, क्योंकि वो दिमागी तौर पर काम नहीं कर रहा था। जाहिर सी बात है, अब ये जो बीमारी होती है उसमें जब आपके पास बुलडोज़र होते हैं तो आपको वही लाशों आप पर कब्जा करते हैं, ये अलग बात है। अब ये इनके जब टैंक्स आए तो उसके बाद इन्होंने रॉकेट मारे, ड्रोन्स मारे, मिसाइल मारे। खाली इनको नहीं, टैंक्स को नहीं खाली, या इनके मिलिट्री व्हीकल्स को नहीं, इनके हेलीकॉप्टर्स भी आए, इनके एयरक्राफ्ट भी आते हैं, उनके ऊपर भी इन्होंने रॉकेट्स मारे, ड्रोन्स मारे और इनके टैंक्स जो आगे आए थे उन्होंने कहा आगे मौत है, पीछे निकलो, और वो सारे के सारे पीछे भागे। यानी इनके मरकावा टैंक जो नहीं भागे वो मरे गए, जो बच गए वो अपनी जानें बचाकर निकल गए, और इसके साथ इनके एयरक्राफ्ट आते हैं, हेलीकॉप्टर्स आते हैं, और वो भी चले गए। लिबनान की जंग, ये गजा को आप भूल जाएं, लेबनान की जंग इतनी तबाहकुन हो गई है, इतनी तबाहकुन हो गई है कि या तो दो काम होते हैं, फौजी मारे जाते हैं, मरकावा टैंक्स तबाह होते हैं, हेलीकॉप्टर्स आपके भाग जाते हैं लाशें उठाकर या जख्मी उठाकर, या आपके ड्रोन्स गिराए जाते हैं। इसके अलावा कुछ नहीं हो रहा। और इन मनाजिर को अभी तक इजरायली मीडिया पर नहीं लाया गया था। अब चूंकि वो आना शुरू हो गए हैं तो फिर एक बड़ी डेवलपमेंट हुई है, वो है इजराइल के डिफेंस मिनिस्टर ने एक लेटर लिखा है। अब ये बज़ाहिर इन्होंने कहा जी लेटर बड़ा कॉन्फिडेंशियल था, लेकिन वो लीक हो गया मीडिया में, पता नहीं कैसे हुआ है, ये खुद ही लीक करते हैं। अब सीन जरा ये समझ ले हुआ क्या है। देखिए, डिफेंस मिनिस्टर वो है जिसको सारी ब्रीफिंग देता है आर्मी चीफ। आर्मी चीफ ने जो कहा इसने वही किया। इसने एक लेटर लिखा है नेतन्याहू को, और इस लेटर के अंदर कहा है कि ये जो जंग आप लड़ रहे हैं इससे ना तो अमन आने वाला है, ना हम ये जंग जीतने वाले हैं, बल्कि उल्टा हमारी तबाही हो रही है, बर्बादी हो रही है। इनडायरेक्टली उसने कह दिया भाई ये जंग हम हार चुके हैं, इस जंग को आप बिल्कुल रोके। उसने कहा ये जो आपने इस वक्त लिबनान के अंदर जंग छिड़ी हुई है, फौज को वहां पर दिखाया है, सबसे पहले तो हमारे वहां पर फौजी मारे जा रहे हैं बड़ी तादाद के अंदर, वहां पर सिक्योरिटी सिचुएशन इंप्रूव करने की जरूरत है, और वहां के जो नॉर्दर्न रेजिडेंट्स हैं उनको घर वापस लाने की जरूरत है। हमारी इकोनॉमी पर बर्डन पड़ रहा है, हमारे लोग छोड़ छोड़ कर मुल्क जा रहे हैं, और हम ये जंग हार रहे हैं, आप इसको वापस करें, रिवर्स।
Because Israel is not above the law, because Israel as the occupying power has to abide by international law, which says the occupying power cannot prevent the implementation of international law and for people under its occupation. Because Israel cannot deny Palestinians the right to live, the right to go to school, the right to eat, and the right to breathe, and the right to hope. Because UNRWA is mandated by the General Assembly that speaks on behalf of the whole international community. That is why UNRWA exists. UNRWA is there to help Palestinian refugees as mandated by the United Nations. Israel has no right, has no jurisdiction legally over the occupied territories except for guaranteeing the safety and well-being of people under its occupation. That is international law, and that is why Israel is, by international law, should be committed to allowing UNRWA in. It can violate international law. It has done so over and over and over again, but that wrong does not mean that Israel has a right to doing that. That is why we have international law. That's why we have the United Nations. And if every country decides to be a pariah state and start violating international law and demanding international humanitarian law, then our world will be.
Hezbollah's rockets are raining down. Israeli cities are on high alert, and Netanyahu's worst nightmare is unfolding right before our eyes. As Israel faces an unprecedented wave of attacks from its northern neighbor, the question is no longer if war will erupt but when. This time, it's not just a threat. Hezbollah has Israel in its crosshairs, and no one knows if it can be stopped. Welcome to your source for breaking news, in-depth analysis, and a clear understanding of the most critical global events. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Today we're diving into a situation that's escalating by the hour: Hezbollah's relentless assault on Israel, the growing fear in the Natenyahu government, and what this means for the future of the Middle East. Let's break it down. The Middle East is on the edge, and Israel is facing one of its gravest threats in decades. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a veteran leader who has weathered many storms, is now confronting a new kind of danger, one that threatens not just his leadership, but the very survival of Israel itself. This is not just a war of attrition anymore. Hezbollah is using precision-guided missiles, which means they're capable of striking high-value targets such as airbases, critical infrastructure, and densely populated urban centers. Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system is effective, but can it withstand an assault of this magnitude? The danger posed by Hezbollah is multi-layered. This is not just about random rocket fire. It's part of a well-calculated strategy to undermine Israel's military deterrence. Over the past few months, Hezbollah has intensified its operations along Israel's northern border. It's not just missiles, they've deployed drones, anti-tank missiles, and even cross-border raids, targeting Israeli military installations and civilian infrastructure. But why now? Why has Hezbollah chosen this moment to escalate the conflict? The answer lies in Israel's internal political landscape. Netanyahu's government is in turmoil. Mass protests have erupted across Israel in response to controversial judicial reforms, leading to a divided nation. Netanyahu's ability to manage internal dissent while addressing external threats is being tested like never before. Hezbollah, seeing Israel distracted by domestic issues, is seizing this moment to challenge Israel's military. He has repeatedly called for tougher international action against Tehran's nuclear ambitions and its regional meddling. Now, as Hezbollah strikes Israel with increasing ferocity, Netanyahu's warnings seem more prophetic than ever. His greatest fear is that Hezbollah, emboldened by Iran, will escalate this conflict to the point where Israel is forced into a full-scale war. The true nightmare for Netanyahu is not just Hezbollah, it's the possibility of a multi-front war. Hezbollah's attacks from Lebanon could soon be mirrored by Hamas in Gaza, where tensions have been steadily rising. And to the east, in the West Bank, Palestinian unrest is growing, leading to violent clashes with Israeli security forces. If Israel is forced to fight on three fronts, Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in the south, and unrest in the West Bank, its military will be stretched to its limits. Even more concerning is the possibility that Iranian-backed militias in Syria and Iraq could join the fight, launching attacks from Israel's eastern borders. Such a scenario would overwhelm Israel's military defenses and push the country into a prolonged and devastating conflict. Netanyahu knows that Israel's security is fragile, and the possibility of a regional war is becoming increasingly real. As tensions rise, the eyes of the world are focused on Israel. The United States, Israel's most powerful ally, has reiterated its support for Netanyahu's government. However, Washington's ability to intervene directly is limited. The Biden administration is already dealing with rising tensions with China and Russia, and the last thing the U.S. wants is to get dragged into another Middle Eastern conflict. Russia, with its significant military presence in Syria and close ties to both Iran and Hezbollah, could play a pivotal role in shaping the outcome of this conflict. Russia's involvement in Syria has allowed it to act as a power broker in the region, and its response to the escalating violence will be critical. Will Moscow intervene to de-escalate the situation, or will it use the conflict to further entrench its influence in the Middle East? As the conflict escalates, the human cost is rising alarmingly. For the people living along Israel's northern border, daily life has turned into a precarious existence, overshadowed by the constant threat of missile attacks. Families have become accustomed to the blaring air raid sirens, which can sound at any moment, plunging them into panic. Children who should be attending school and playing in the park are instead being whisked away into bomb shelters, their childhoods marred by fear and uncertainty. The psychological toll on these young minds is profound. Many suffer from anxiety and trauma, unsure of when they will return home, or if they'll see their homes and communities again. But the suffering isn't confined to Israel. In Lebanon, where Hezbollah operates, the civilian population is caught in the crossfire. Families in border towns find themselves fleeing their homes, unsure of where to go or if they'll be able to return. The air is thick with fear as communities grapple with the uncertainty of their future. Entire neighborhoods are devastated, and the humanitarian crisis is deepening. The humanitarian response is crucial, but often inadequate. Aid organizations are scrambling to provide food, water, and medical assistance to those affected, but the escalating violence makes it difficult to reach those in need. Hospitals in both Israel and Lebanon are overwhelmed, struggling to treat the injured amid ongoing hostilities. In Israel, the psychological impact is becoming evident, with many civilians reporting increased levels of anxiety and depression. Support networks are working tirelessly to provide mental health services, but the need far outstrips the available resources. As the conflict rages on, it's the civilians who bear the brunt of the violence. Mothers, fathers, and children on both sides are united in their desire for peace, yet find themselves ensnared in a cycle of fear and desperation. The stark reality is that every rocket fired, every retaliatory strike, leaves behind a trail of destruction and despair, affecting lives far beyond the battlefield. As the conflict escalates, Prime Minister Netanyahu finds himself at a crossroads, facing a series of impossible decisions that could define his legacy and Israel's future. The situation is dire, and every option carries significant risks. Should he opt for a full-scale ground invasion of Lebanon to neutralize Hezbollah's capabilities once and for all? Such a move could be a decisive victory, but it also runs the risk of triggering a broader regional war that would embroil Israel in a protracted conflict. Netanyahu is acutely aware of the consequences of every decision he makes. If he chooses to escalate, he risks a unified front among Israel's enemies, with Iran potentially leveraging its proxies to open new fronts in Gaza and the West Bank. The political ramifications are significant. Opposition parties within Israel are watching closely, ready to pounce on any missteps. In a moment of crisis, domestic unity is crucial, yet Netanyahu's government is plagued by internal dissent and protests against his leadership. His handling of the situation will be scrutinized not just by his political opponents, but also by an anxious public. How will he justify the potential loss of lives and the economic cost of war to citizens who are already struggling with inflation and other socio-economic issues? As Netanyahu prepares for what could be the fight of his life, the world watches. Can Israel survive Hezbollah's relentless assault? Or are we witnessing the beginning of a broader regional war that no one can stop? The future of Israel and the Middle East hangs in the balance. Don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth analysis and updates on this unfolding crisis. What do you think? Can Netanyahu stop Hezbollah's assault? Or is a larger war inevitable? Let us know in the comments below and share this video to keep the conversation going. Thank you for watching.
Israel is not above the law because Israel, as the occupying power, has to abide by international law, which says the occupying power cannot prevent the implementation of international law and for people under its occupation. Because Israel cannot deny Palestinians the right to live, the right to go to school, the right to eat, and the right to breathe, and the right to hope. Because UNRWA is mandated by the General Assembly that speaks on behalf of the whole international community. That is why UNRWA exists. UNRWA is there to help Palestinian refugees as mandated by the United Nations. Israel has no right, has no jurisdiction legally over the occupied territories except for guaranteeing the safety and well-being of people under its occupation. That is international law, and that is why Israel is, by international law, should be committed to allowing UNRWA in. It can violate international law. It has done so over and over and over again, but that wrong does not mean that Israel has a right to doing that. That is why we have international law. That's why we have the United Nations. And if every country decides to be a pariah state and start violating international law, undermining international humanitarian law, then our world will be a jungle. It's imposing. Is it a threat to feed children?
No.
Is it a threat to allow children to go to school? Is it a threat to vaccinate people against polio? Is it a threat to say the Palestinian people have rights, inalienable rights, anchored in the Charter of the United Nations? Where is the threat? I mean, it is ridiculous to assume that a United Nations agency mandated with a humanitarian work could be a threat to anybody. UNRWA is not a threat. UNRWA is an asset. UNRWA is an agency that's saving lives, that's helping people, that is keeping hope. That is what UNRWA is. And therefore, to assume that UNRWA is a threat is just beyond reason, beyond decide who's a refugee or not. The international law decides. Israel is an occupying power, and therefore it has to abide by international law. UNRWA is mandated by the UN to help refugees until their issue is resolved in accordance with international law. And let me remind you, in 2002, the Arab Peace Initiative was out there, and it spoke of an agreed to solution to the refugees problem within the context of addressing the final status issue. How could a child be a threat to Israel? How could Palestinians who are living under Israeli occupation be a threat to Israel? And how could applying international law be a threat to Israel? We have to speak facts here. We cannot listen to dissemination. We cannot listen to misrepresentation of facts. Again, UNRWA is an international agency mandated by the UN that speaks on behalf of the global community, that has a very clear mandate that is stipulated in its funding charter. That is what UNRWA is. To say that UNRWA is a threat is, with all due respect, is just.
Please subscribe to this channel and leave your kind comments. Press the bell button and subscribe so that the latest vlog or the analysis reaches you in time.